Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Fanatic, and today we're taking a look at Horrified, a lightweight cooperative game themed around Universal Studios' classic monster movies by Ravensburger. As you can probably tell by my lack of costume, I don't get much into Halloween. But cooperative board games themed around classic films? Now there's a topic I'm ready to explore. As soon as you open up the box, the very first thing that you'll see is the back of the board. It sets the mood with some suitably cheesy narration that I highly recommend you read before your first time playing. In Horrified, 1 to 5 players will work together to defeat a number of monsters attacking a small village. Depending on how difficult your group wants things, you can face off against anywhere from 2 to 4 of the monsters at the same time. You may find yourself facing off against Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein's monster and his bride, the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Wolfman, or the Invisible Man. You'll have to work together with the other players, collect items, and protect innocent villagers if you want to survive until dawn. In order to win, players will need to defeat all monsters on the board before the monster deck runs out and before the terror marker can reach the 7th spot on the board. To set up, you'll need to place a terror marker on the 0 spot, or on the 3 if you're playing with just one character. You'll shuffle up the monster and perk decks, and then deal 1 card to each player from the ladder. More on those in a moment. You'll then choose which monsters are currently terrorizing the village. 2 for an easy game, 3 for normal, or 4 for hard mode. Monster boards are identical on the back if you want to pick at random, though the designers recommend using Dracula and the creature from the Black Lagoon for your first time playing, so I'll be using them for this review. Each monster has their own setup, which we'll get to in a bit. You'll take the frenzy marker and place it on the monster with the lowest frenzy number, in this case, Dracula. Next, you'll take the hero badges and randomly give 1 to each player, determining who they play as. Grab each character's standee and place them where indicated by their character badge. After that, you'll take the item bag, shuffle up the tokens inside, and draw 12 at random. Each item has a location list on it which shows where it starts. Some locations may have more than 1 item, and many may start empty, but plenty more items will come into play over the course of the game. You'll then gather up the dice and villager standees, setting them in easy reach of all players, and then you're ready to begin. In Horrified, each turn consists of 2 phases, a hero phase and then a monster phase. During the hero phase, the active player may take actions, most heroes getting 4 actions per turn. You may repeat the same action multiple times if needed, or do all different actions. Move is the simplest action. It allows you to move from one space to an adjacent one, and you have the option of leading any villagers in your space along with you. Next is the guide action. With it, you can command 1 villager in an adjacent space to come to you, or command 1 in your space to move to an adjacent one. I'll explain more about villagers in a little bit. The third action is Pick Up, which allows you to collect any and all items in your current space as a single action. After that, we have the Share action, which allows all players in your current space to freely trade items between each other, even if you yourself don't give or take anything. You can also use actions to work towards defeating the monsters, which I'll explain once we get into each individual monster. Finally, most characters have a unique action that only they can take. For example, the courier can move to any space with another hero, while the professor can move any hero or villager regardless of where they might be on the map. The mayor has no special abilities, but she gets to take an extra action each turn. In addition to actions, players may also use their perk cards. These don't take an action to play and may even be played on another player's turn, but only during the hero phase. After a perk is resolved, it's discarded and may not be used again that game, though some perks are repeated in the deck. Perks can do many useful things, including moving heroes, driving monsters back, moving or placing items, or even allowing players to skip the next monster phase. After a player ends their turn, it then progresses to the monster phase. To begin, the active player draws the top card of the monster deck and resolves it in 3 steps. First, they check the number on top and draw that many item tokens, placing each where listed on the token. Second, you have an event. Villager events always happen, though if an event pertains to a specific monster, that event only resolves if the monster in question is active in the game. In this case, we'll place the creature on the river space as indicated by the event. After that, we resolve monster movement and strikes. Here, we see the symbols for the Wolfman, the Bride, and the Frenzied Monster. We resolve each of these in that order. Since the Wolfman and the Bride aren't in this game, we simply skip over them and head to the Frenzied Monster, which in this case is Dracula. We first move him one space to the closest hero or villager. If there's a tie, the active player decides which way they'll move. If they're already in a space with a human character, they simply remain where they are and roll their dice to attack, opting to attack heroes over villagers if both are in the same space. You'll roll 1 to 3 dice as indicated on the card. In this case, Dracula rolls 3. Each die can have one of 3 results, with 2 blanks, 1 power symbol, and 3 attack symbols. Blanks are ignored, and you can consider yourself lucky for any that are rolled. If attack symbols are rolled against villagers, that villager has died and the terror marker moves up 1 space. If attack symbols are rolled when targeting a hero, the hero has 2 options. They can either discard a number of items equal to the attacks rolled against them, or if a player is unwilling or unable to discard enough items, then they are injured. When a hero is injured, the terror marker again moves up 1 space, and the hero is removed from the board. At the start of that player's next turn, the hero will reappear at the hospital. Finally, you have power symbols, which act differently for each monster. I'll get to those in just a moment. But first, let's look at villagers. There are 10 villager cards in the monster deck, each of which will spawn a different character. Villagers can be moved by players as mentioned earlier, and each has a specific destination on the map they're trying to reach. If they survive long enough to reach their destination, they're removed from the board and the active player draws a perk card. Keep in mind that this is the only way to gain extra perks after the start of the game. But what really brings the game's theme to the forefront is how every monster changes the game. Not only do each of them have unique cards in the monster deck, but each must be confronted in a different manner. First, we have Dracula. When you start a game with Dracula, you'll place his coffins on 4 spots as indicated by his character card, and then place him on the crypt. When Dracula rolls a power symbol, the active player is lured into his space. In order to defeat Dracula, you'll first have to use 6 points worth of red items, representing physical items, to smash each coffin. Once he has no more coffins to retreat to, you'll have to use 6 points worth of yellow items, representing spiritual items, to vanquish the count once and for all. Or at least until a Belmont can get there. When playing with the mummy, you'll place an overlay tile on the museum, which is also where he'll start. He comes with 6 scarab tokens, which you'll mix up into 2 piles, randomly placing pieces 1 to 3 on spots 4 to 6, and vice versa. Whenever the mummy rolls a power symbol, you'll flip a scarab face down, which prevents it from moving. In order to defeat the mummy, you'll first need to use yellow items. Whenever you use an item, you can slide scarabs a number of times equal to the item's point value. So if you used a crucifix, for example, you could make 4 moves. Keep in mind that if a piece is flipped over, you'll have to spend a move to turn it back up. Once all 6 scarabs are face up in their matching space, then you can use 9 points of red items to steal him back inside of his tomb. Third in frenzy order is Frankencelery. Wait, that's not right. I'm sorry. Frankenstein's monster and his bride. The monster starts at the graveyard while the bride starts out at the dungeon. When the frenzy token is on their card, only the monster is frenzied. Each has their own activation symbol and acts as normal. When either of them rolls a power symbol, then after resolving any hits, the bride will advance 1 space toward the monster. If the 2 of them meet early, the terror marker goes up by 1, and they must reset their positions at the graveyard and dungeon once more. In order to pacify them, you must use yellow items to teach the monster, and blue items, representing intellectual items, to teach the bride, increasing their dials to match. Once the monster is at 11 points and his mate is at 8, you then want them to meet, which will remove them as a threat. Fourth up is the creature from the Black Lagoon. When playing against the creature, you'll place an overlay tile on the camp, and the creature himself will start, where else, in the lagoon. It should be noted that the creature is the only piece in the game that can move into and through the water spaces. We'll get to his power symbol in a moment, but to prepare to defeat the creature, you must first find his lair by going to the camp and discarding items to advance the boat. You may discard any item and move along in Candyland style, advancing to the next space that matches that color. However, whenever the creature rolls a power symbol, the boat moves backward 1 space. When the boat is at the creature's lair, then you can battle the creature himself by discarding 1 item of each color to defeat him. Next up, we have the Wolfman. Once again, you'll use an overlay tile, this time placing it at the laboratory, while the Wolfman himself starts out at the mansion. When the Wolfman attacks, any power symbols rolled count as a hit against all heroes and villagers in that space, killing any villagers instantly, and with each hero resolving the hits as they normally would. Before you can defeat the Wolfman, first you have to develop a cure, bringing 2 blue items each of values 1 through 3 to develop the cure. Then, the player with the cure must subdue the Wolfman with 6 points worth of red items in order to keep him still long enough to administer the cure. Finally is the nefarious Invisible Man, who also brings the final overlay tile being placed on the precinct. If the Invisible Man rolls a power symbol, then after resolving his attack symbols, he'll move towards the nearest villager. In order to defeat the Invisible Man, first you'll have to gather evidence of his existence from 5 different locations, bringing items from each of them to the precinct. Once you have all the evidence necessary, it's time to confront the Invisible Man himself, who can be defeated with 9 points of red items. Play will continue alternating between hero and monster turns until one of 3 end conditions are met. If the terror marker reaches the 7th space, or if you need to draw a monster card and there are none left in the deck, then the heroes have failed and you lose the game. If the players manage to defeat all the monsters in play before either of these events happen, then they are victorious and have won the game. Component-wise, the game is definitely above average. Cards are of decent thickness, cardboard is nice and thick, dice are engraved, and there's enough plastic stands that every standee will have their own, so you don't have to worry about sliding them on and off and damaging the cardboard in the process. Only the monsters themselves have figures, but just as with the films that inspired the game, the monsters are more of the stars of the show than the heroes are, so it's oddly fitting in a way. The game also includes a drawstring bag to shuffle and store the item tokens, and there's also a simple cardboard organizer included. It's not great, but it does make the job of setup and cleanup a little easier at least. All in all, Horrified is an impressive co-op. It's simple enough that just about anyone can learn how to play, and clocking in at about an hour, it's not that long either. This title just oozes with theme. Not only does each monster play differently, perfectly capturing the feel of their own film, but all of the villagers represent minor characters from the franchise as well. My biggest complaints about Pandemic, which has been the go-to lightweight cooperative game for over a decade now, are twofold. Firstly, the theme just never seemed to shine through that well. And secondly, it felt like there wasn't very much variety unless you bought expansions to go with it. Despite sharing a similar price tag, Horrified does a great job of avoiding both of those pitfalls. If it wasn't for the fact that Kings of Israel already replaced it for me, Horrified would definitely be my Pandemic killer. Whether you're a fan of classic films, or you just want an enjoyable co-op that doesn't take a great deal of time to learn or teach, I find that Horrified is worthy of a respectable 8.1 out of 10. I should also briefly mention that a new version of the game has been released, which is based off of American folklore rather than the Universal film franchises. I've not tried it myself, but if facing off against Bigfoot and Chupacabra seems more your speed than battling against Dracula and the Invisible Man, you may want to consider picking up that one instead. If you're interested in purchasing or learning more, links are included in the description. But what about you? What do you think of Horrified? Which version interests you more? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And please remember to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.